All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Katarina Polonska. Katarina, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. And I've been looking forward to this. You and I already got to have a conversation, get to know each other a little bit, and I've just, man, I've been looking forward to having this conversation and doing this interview with you today. I want to start off by just giving a shout out to the folks at the Quoted platform because that's how you and I met, and
Absolutely.
I just really appreciate those guys. I appreciate what they are doing. I mean, I started using them about a year ago, and I have had just such great results using that platform. I've met some really great guests for the podcast, and so if anybody there happens to be listening, man, I appreciate you. And so Katerina, what I'll do is, I mean, we'll just dig right in. I'll just start off with a really simple question to start. What do you do, and who do you serve?
Great question. What do I do? I help high achievers, high performers, executives with their relationships, personal and professional,
Okay.
mainly personal these days, but I do professional relationships as well. What I mean by that is typically three things I help solve for. Number one, do I stay or go in my marriage or relationship?
Okay.
Number two, if I decide to stay, how do I improve my relationship? And number three, if I don't have a relationship, how do I actually create a healthy, secure, meaningful relationship? So
Okay.
they're really the three buckets that I work in. And yeah, before this, I was in the corporate space and behavioral science. Before that, I actually had a career in the wine industry. Very random, very fun.
Oh,
Yeah, very, very
okay.
fun.
So those three buckets that you mentioned, what is the breakdown? What percentage of clients do you like? What's the breakdown? And how
Yeah,
many
great
like what?
question.
Yeah.
The majority of my clients are in that do I stay or go camp.
Okay.
So they
Okay.
will typically come to me after being, I have people who are engaged, but generally it's married folks who maybe they got married in their late 20s or early 30s, and now they're in their 40s. And there's really this question of, am I with the right person that I want to spend the rest of my life with? Things have changed. Maybe I know who I am more now. Maybe my life has changed. Maybe my values have shifted. Maybe when I met my partner, I was looking for safety and security and for someone to be the mother or father of my children. And now that I'm here and it's been 15 years or 12 years, really, we're actually two very different people. And maybe I'm not craving safety in the same way anymore. Maybe the children are older. And what I'm looking for is actually more of a soulmate, more of a real partner to me. And maybe, as I have in many instances, I've actually met somebody else. And I'm in this really torn situation of, do I break up the family unit for this other person? That comes with a lot of risks. Or do I double down on my relationship? But maybe we've tried couples counseling that hasn't really got us very far. Maybe my partner doesn't see a problem. Maybe my partner's just more of an avoidant and actually doesn't want to even look at the problem. So these are the situations I tend to work with. That's the majority of my work. I will say that wanting to improve the relationship is often will come actually on the back of this bucket. So if they
Okay.
decide they do want to stay, but that the improving relationships probably 30%
Okay.
of my
Okay.
work. And then working with single people is probably around 20%.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And how did you happen to get into doing this kind of work, Katerina?
Yeah, I mean, I do ask myself every single day how I got here. Very, very, very random story. But really, it's a combination of personal, academic, and professional interests that led me here. On a, I'll start with the academic maybe. On an academic level, I've always been fascinated by love, really, and by the dynamics between men and women and how men and women relate to each other and by different energies and masculinity and femininity and communication. And I've always been more of a combination of philosopher and a social scientist.
Okay.
And so throughout my academic career, I've studied that. And it really culminated when I was looking at communication, masculinity, all of these different identities at Oxford for my master's degree. And that actually led me into a career in behavioral science. So I actually took it more professionally, where I was looking at everything from DEI issues to looking at leadership to performance, and also kind of weaving in these broader social science narratives around, well, what does it actually mean to be a leader? What does it mean to be masculine? What does it mean to be feminine? What does it mean between how men and women actually interact and connect? So that was really my professional and academic space that I played in.
Okay.
And then on a personal level, I've not been very lucky in relationships, to
Okay.
put it bluntly. So I have a real history in my family of unhappy relational dynamics.
Okay.
So I honestly couldn't point my finger at a happy couple for a big chunk of my life. And my parents were the happy couple, but actually that after around 35 years of marriage culminated in my dad leaving. And so that was a real shock to the family system. And something that I ended up helping them navigate through in my early 20s, which was a lot for someone in their early 20s.
Yeah.
But obviously, I love both of my parents and I didn't want lawyers to get them to kill each other. So I stepping in. But that left its mark. And after that, I was single for a very long time.
Okay.
I really struggled to trust. I really struggled to find healthy love. I became very anxiously attached after my parents separated.
Mhm.
And that obviously had been in the works before that, but it really exacerbated after the separation. And then it was when I was actually in my first engagement, where in theory everything should have been working for me. I was engaged. I worked in behavioral science. I had done well over 15 years of therapy at this point. I had done all the retreats I could imagine. I knew about attachment theory. I kind of knew it all intellectually.
Mhm.
I'd studied the Gottman method, I could communicate. I had the theory down like a good little academic, but the real practice of being engaged and a wedding looming at us and being in my early 30s at a childbearing age where I really wanted a family, all of my stuff came up. And that's when I realized, no, I can know all the theory. That doesn't translate into having the healthy relationship.
Mhm.
Theory is one thing, but practice and embodiment is another. And so I actually ended up calling off that engagement for various reasons. And as I was single again in my 30s at this point, thinking, I don't know if I'm ever going to have children. I don't know if I'm going to ever have a family. I really doubled down, trying to understand where did I go wrong? And as I was doubling down and really analyzing all of this and actually practicing the theory and embodying the practices that maybe I had learned in 2007, because really I started learning a lot of this coaching world in 2007 when I did my first coaching qualification. I
Okay.
actually began embodying it and practicing it. And then I began talking to my peers. And it was when I began talking to my peers, other high achievers, high performers, people that I'd studied with at Oxford, I realized, oh, I'm not alone in this, actually. There's a real trend here. How many of us, again, might know some of the theory,
Mhm.
can be great at their careers, great professionally, but actually don't necessarily have great relationships.
Yeah.
And it is a whole different beast, really. And so that when I met my husband, I played around with the idea of building a business. I didn't know what it would be. I didn't have the energy for a business. I was actually burned out and kind of over corporate. So my plan was to start a hobby. That's how this will start. I was going to have a hobby. The hobby was coaching other high performers, really on helping them discern what their gut instinct was and what
Okay.
was coming up as a wounded fear-based reaction. Something I've struggled with a lot. And as I doubled down on that and started practicing that and training more in that, and I'm a fiend for qualifications and studying, again, it dawned on me that this is a really common problem. And slowly but surely, this became my work. And then it became my business. And now it's really the full time thing that I do. I mean, it's more than full time. I actually need to reduce my hours and my life back. But it's really taken off. And it is there is a gap in the market, I see, because no one teaches us how to be good at relationships.
Mhm.
And again, you can be great at your career, but there's no intervention teaching you this is how to do relationships. And the final thing I'll say, I think the only time we really start to realize relationships aren't easy and I actually need to study them is typically after we've been burned, whether it's after calling off an engagement or going through a divorce, right? Generally speaking, if you haven't gone through that extremely humbling act, there can be this sense that surely it can't be that hard.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it
Or it'll
absolutely
be okay,
will be
or
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that, and I do blame society and conditioning for that. We grow up with Disney narratives and Hollywood narratives and this very kind of assumptive reality that everything will be okay, everything will be fine. If you do everything right, if you work hard, if you make money, if you get the home, if you have your investments, you get the education, if you show up, if you're a good little worker bee in society,
Yeah.
then the partner will come and eventually you'll be married and then you'll have kids. None of these are guarantees.
Yeah.
Even having kids is absolutely no guarantee. I mean, the
Nope.
amount of fertility challenges out there right now. And so this is a dialogue that needs to be happening more, and it's not happening more. And that's a real tragedy, I think, in our society.
Yeah. I've been an entrepreneur for 31 years now,
Mhm.
and I spend a lot of time with other entrepreneurs. And I know that there is I don't know what percentage it would be, but there is definitely a high percentage of entrepreneurs who go all in on their businesses and stuff. And they are all about, hey, I'm gonna support my family, I'm gonna take care of my family, I'm gonna provide for my family. And they do.
Yeah.
They do that. But many of those entrepreneurs, they're not present
Yeah.
for their family, for their spouses, for their kids, because they're so busy running the business and providing financially. And I've seen a number of my entrepreneur friends
Yeah.
get divorced
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
that.
72% statistically. That's a
72%, huh? Wow.
72%, yeah, of
Wow.
entrepreneurs are going to get divorced. And my husband and I are both entrepreneurs, so you can imagine how
That's a
much we're doubling
huge
down on our
percent.
relationship. Yeah, it's really common. And it makes sense, right? Again, entrepreneurship is a combination of being wired a very specific way. I think it was Gabor Mate that said, building a business or becoming an entrepreneur is a trauma response, right? There is something in the wiring of entrepreneurs that makes us be audacious, want to take risks, have this insane fuel and ambition and willingness to keep grinding and believing. And a lot of that can come from a wounded place. That's not to say that you can't be an entrepreneur and feel healthy and secure within yourself. Absolutely you can. But often it does come from a wounded place.
Yeah.
And similarly, when we think about the activities of being an entrepreneur, a lot of them are really counterproductive to a nurturing, healthy family life, right?
Okay. Mhm.
So there's a number of competing things there that are really making the odds be stacked against us.
Yeah.
And it's not really a surprise that the divorce rate is so high.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What's the thing that inspires you most about the work you get to do and the impact that you get to have on people, Katarina?
Yeah. It's a little bit selfish, I
Okay.
dare admit. The thing that I actually really get the most enjoyment out of, before I went into behavioral science, I was living in the Middle East. I was living in Dubai, and my dad was living in Syria, and I I saw a lot of suffering and inequality and horrible things. And actually, when I left Dubai, and after I did my master's degree, I went into philanthropy, into international aid work, into development. I became really passionate about justice
Okay.
and helping people, right? Helping people, helping animals is making the world a better place.
Mhm.
And so after a brief career in philanthropy and burning out there because it was terribly paid and extremely hard work, I went into behavioral science. And I was really interested in how do we make the world a better place through the power of behavioral science. And my premise now is, given how challenging life is, and given how many of us, I would argue most of us, are walking around with a lot of our own wounds from childhood, a lot of our own patterns from childhood, from living in this culture that drives us to disconnect from ourselves, that makes us have to grind and perform and hustle and blah, 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 blah. So many of us are actually struggling on that internal level, even if we don't realize it.
Mhm.
And that breeds unhappiness. And unhappiness breeds more unhappiness, right? There's this kind of idea of like hurt people hurt people.
Mhm.
And that will bleed into the family dynamic, which will then bleed into the children, which will then bleed into that. It's a whole generational
Just keeps
thing.
going and going.
The same in companies, right? How many of us have heard the saying that people don't leave a company, they leave a manager, right? They leave the leaders. And if you have leaders, which I have seen, who are not regulated in themselves, who are not happy with themselves, who don't know who their authentic selves are, and are just showing up like some kind of machine, just grinding through and performing and being, again, so disconnected from their own humanity, their own vulnerability. they're not secure enough to actually bring those more vulnerable pieces to
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
that does in fact breed unhealthy cultures, right? It'll cascade down. And so when when I started learning about attachment theory and patterns and reconditioning and nerve system regulation, all of these different pieces that help us be better and happy within ourselves, more authentic, more vulnerable, more connected, more strong, more resilient, because actually we're unstoppable at that point. And we become better partners, which then creates better children. And I say better in terms of kind of feeling more secure, feeling healthier, feeling happier, right? But we also create better companies, better cultures, which then creates better employees, which then creates better family dynamics. And it's a whole web, a whole chain of events.
Yeah.
And so my premise now is my impact, my philanthropy, one of my many philanthropies, is I want to help elevate humanity to its next level of consciousness by helping people reconnect with themselves, become more secure in themselves, become happier and healthier and more fulfilled within themselves, so that the world is happier in itself. I cannot imagine what the political system would look like if politicians did this work.
Yeah,
Really,
right.
I cannot
If
imagine.
more politicians were happy with themselves.
Right? My
Yeah.
goodness. I mean, the horrors coming out of the
Yeah.
US right now, I just think that's a lot of deeply wounded, deeply traumatized, deeply unhappy people doing
Yeah.
deeply terrible things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Start with that.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Well, and we don't have to name names here or anything
Mhm.
like that, but what's an example of a result that you've helped a client get that you're just incredibly proud of, Katarina?
Mm. I've got one in mind because I was just thinking about them this morning. This is a common trajectory that I see in my work. I will often have a one person of a relationship come to me and say, I think I need to leave my partner, but I'm not 100% sure. Help me decide.
Okay.
And I start working with them. We learn that there's often an emotional or physical affair happening as well. They're being pulled in two directions. They don't know what to do. And my work is to help them see, where are they not seeing the relationship and the dynamic clearly? Not because they're wrong, but because they have their own patterns and conditioning that are really preventing them from seeing things in a more objective light.
Okay.
And that really looks at their patterns, their behavioral conditioning, their subconscious works, and shifting that, kind of upgrading their lens, upgrading their glasses. And so when I help them do that, and this gentleman in particular, they see their partner differently. They see the relationship differently. They actually see how they could have been contributing to the problem in the first place. And they start to take accountability and ownership over their behavior, which is a very empowering, wonderful thing to do. Right. And so they start doing that. The relationship starts to inherently begin to improve. The partner's like, what's happened to you? Who is this alien who's now in my house, who's behaving very differently? Conflict tends to diminish. Their relationship starts to improve. And often at this point, they will disclose, I'm actually working with someone. I have been working with someone.
Okay.
And I would like to bring this someone into our relationship. I can become the third person. And at that point, I might start working with a partner as well and helping the partner see how they've contributed to the dynamic as well. And so at this point, I'll be working with both of them separately. We might start to do some couples work. And that's where it gets really fun, because by this time, we all share shared language. There's a lot of sharing there. We all understand the deeper patterns at play, and everyone's taking accountability and ownership for their side of the street. Everyone is sovereign, mature, and being an adult. And at that point, it makes it so much easier to do more typical couples work, like learning different strategies, learning communication, right? Because people are taking accountability.
Yeah.
That is my favorite cycle to be in. Really rewarding. I will say, I can have a kind of a similar result without actually involving the partner as well.
Okay.
When the situation isn't so awful, and let's say the partner has their own therapist or maybe even their own coach, and the partner has their own growth mindset, often what can actually happen is it just takes working with one person for them to start shifting their behavior and for then the relationship to start shifting. Because when you start shifting your behavior, the relationship's going to shift too.
Sure.
Right? I mean, if I started screaming at you right now, the dynamic would really change in our conversation, right?
Yes.
And you might start screaming at me. But if it's like, if I change how I show up with you, and even change just the way that I hold myself, the energy that I bring to the table, the relationship will inherently change. And that's really what it's about. But it's the final thing I'll say is, it's not about forcing it. it's about working on that deeper level, clearing out those deeper systems that might not be working for you, optimizing those systems
Yeah.
so that you don't even have to think about it. You show up naturally more regulated, naturally calmer. You don't get triggered so quickly. You don't misconstrue when your partner comes home and maybe slams the door and drops their bag and runs upstairs without saying hello as, oh, I've done something wrong. They must be mad at me. You think, oh no, they probably had a really hard day. Let me make them a cup of tea and I'll wait for them to calm down and give them a big hug. Very different response
Yeah.
and very different thought
Yeah.
patterns, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I love working with individuals so much. It's so empowering. And ultimately, whatever happens, it's a win-win
Yeah.
because, either your relationship improves, you're improving either way. You can handle it either way. And you will
Yeah.
be happy, whatever happens, because you are happy in yourself.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, okay. So now that we've got some context set here and people have an idea of who you are, Katarina, and what you're all about, I want to switch gears just a little teeny bit. And I want to start talking about the relationship side of this really quick. So, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to say it's my husband.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
say that because it's such a actual beautiful testimony to what can happen in a happy relationship, right? I spent my whole life thinking, oh, I'm probably destined to be an entrepreneur, but oh, it's going to be hard. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what my idea will be. I tried building a business when I was 22 in the wine industry. I loved
Uh-huh.
it, but didn't really know what I was doing. And then I was in corporate, and always I had this like entrepreneurial bug, but I honestly didn't know what it would be. And I would sit there ideating different business ideas and then freaking myself out that I'm not a tech entrepreneur. Like I can't do this, I can't do that. And it was actually when I had decided to quit corporate, I'd had enough of corporate. I didn't know what I would do. I honestly didn't know. I thought I'm probably going to end up coming back to corporate in some shape or form. Maybe I'll go and do a PhD. I'm not sure. And I was in this sort of limbo space. And I just called off my last engagement. I was living in the UK. I didn't want to be in the UK. Oh, my life was a hot mess. And I actually met my husband. And his life was also a bit of a hot mess because he was also in a state of flux. But what really happened there is that in the process of having that really healthy connection where I felt for the first time in a relationship really safe, really seen, really heard, really understood, really free to be my authentic self, to tune into my value systems, to be opinionated, to be feisty, to be me. And I felt really held by him in that, and vice versa. And he was a high school teacher who was burned out from being a high school teacher and kind of really disillusioned with how poorly paid it is and also burned out. So there was something really magical that happened when we came together, that we both found an avenue and a space and a home for our authentic selves. And in that process, my little hobby of I'm going to just, get more coaching qualifications, start coaching, slowly began to become more of a business. And at the time, my husband, he could see me doing this and he was like, well, I'm just going to help you. And so he began helping me. Didn't ask him to help me, but he essentially became my right-hand man. And he helped me. And over the process of a year, the business grew. And then by year two, it had more than doubled. And
Wow.
by year two,
Wow.
he kind of recognized, okay, my little bird has flown. She doesn't need me. And he began doing his own thing. And at this point, it was so interesting. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do. And so I also began leaning in with him and inspiring him. And now in about a week or so, he's going to be acquiring a business. So he fully, became an entrepreneur himself as well. Neither of us thought that we would actually become entrepreneurs. He never thought that he would be an entrepreneur. I never thought I'd be an entrepreneur. Like I wanted to be, but I never thought it actually happened. I thought, honestly, I would marry someone who earned more money than me. And, I'd probably have kids, stay in corporate, have good benefits, take a year or two off. And that would be that. And maybe I'd create something as a bit of a hobby in my late 40s or 50s. That's really what I thought. And the funny thing here is that the business that I built, I kind of resisted at the very beginning. Like I wasn't ready I didn't necessarily want to do it. I was burned out. I wanted a sabbatical. But with my husband behind me and with him believing in me and with the level of safety in my system that I felt, it became something that I just did. Not to mention, obviously, the topic is relationships, which is kind of funny, right? That came after I met him. But the point is that I can look at it now and say, my value system around authenticity and liberation and achieving our greatest potential. And I tell my clients all the time, when you become more secure and you get into a secure, healthy, meaningful relationship, your income will increase if you want it to. It just will. And I'm sitting here and I actually got my corporate taxes last week and I'm making 6x, like 6 times what I was making when I was in corporate. And I'm in
Okay.
year 4 of my
Wow.
business,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I don't work more harder than I work in corporate and probably the same amount.
Well,
I'm not
that's good.
landing.
You don't have to work 6 times as hard to get
No,
that.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. But really, it's like the wealth has started to flow in because I am in authentic, I hate the word alignment, but I'm in authentic alignment. I feel well resourced. I have safety and stability at home, knock on wood, like I'm very, very lucky. And I have the support to actually explore, to play, to be adventurous. I have
Mm.
that freedom. And same thing with my husband as well. It's really lovely how we're kind of taking in turns to support each other. Now my business is more stable. I can support him in his new
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
None of that would have been possible without, I would argue, without a healthy relationship. And, I can hear some people might be thinking, she would have done it alone. And you can't say that a woman can't build a business without a man. I'm not saying that I couldn't have built it without him, but the easefulness and the serendipity and
Yeah.
the sheer flow
Yeah.
of this whole process, I would argue, has come from me being very stable. And I've told a lot of my clients, especially my single clients, when we are single, a lot of our headspace is preoccupied with finding love. I
Okay.
mean, show me someone who isn't thinking about it all the time. I know when I was single, it was such a big thing that I was concerned with. I was thinking about, I'd even on a very latent level, I'd be going somewhere and scanning the room and thinking of where am I going to meet the guy? And it was very much front and center of my mind. I think that's true for a lot of people. And when I was unhappy in my relationship, that also took up a lot of my bandwidth because then suddenly I'm at work and I can't focus and I'm checking my phone and my phone's blowing up and I'm going through a texting battle with him. And, and it was a lot of
Mm.
stress that really took away my freedom to concentrate. I tell people all the time that I don't think about my husband. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in the sense of my headspace is clear
Yeah.
to focus, to
Yeah.
dream big, to ideate. And all I have to think about is, I'm taking him out for dinner tonight. Like, oh, what am I going to wear? And like, what are we going to eat?
Yeah.
And what kind of bottle of wine are we going to open? Like, it's nice things,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
comes with a lot of inner work, a lot of prevention. We've done couples counseling many times, purely as I don't want to be, I don't want to be coaching my own relationship. I'd
Mhm.
rather have a third person
Mhm.
so I can just, take a back seat, learn new techniques from them, and have conscious time to practice together. I think it's a wonderful thing to do,
Yeah.
right? Preventative
Yeah.
measures. So, yeah, it's my husband that I would say.
It's so interesting because until you just now brought that up, I hadn't thought about it because, my wife and I will celebrate our 21st anniversary this year. And we've been together for 23 years. And so, but now that you're talking about this, back before I met her, and I was kind of that in that dating place, it did take a lot of mental space,
Yeah,
and because I was like, I just want to find that right person.
yeah,
And I had already been married and divorced once, and I affectionately refer that as that was my practice marriage,
mhm,
and so
yeah,
and I learned from that, and my first wife learned from that, and now 21 years into this marriage, I'm just like, you know what, we're doing pretty doggone good, and you're right, so much of what I do is about I just I love being that guy who just my wife and my kids pretty much get everything they need and most of what they want,
mhm, Hmm.
And they inspire me to do what I do because I do. And in
Hmm.
fact, you know what? As we're recording this, just yesterday, our seventh grandchild was born. We have a brand new
Oh,
baby granddaughter,
oh,
and she's
congratulations.
such a cutie. In fact, when
Yeah.
we're done today, I'm heading back down to the hospital to go see her more.
Oh,
And
amazing,
so,
amazing.
and I love being a husband, a father, and a grandfather. We've got seven kids, and now we've got seven grandkids too.
Mm, hmm.
And I love my role there.
Yeah.
And so, well, so for anybody listening to this, because I like the people who follow this podcast, they are entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, running businesses, typically anywhere on the low end, maybe 500,000 a year on up to 750 million a year and everything in between. And, so I would imagine there's a few of them listening to this going, you know what? Man, Katarina, maybe I should talk with her. And so for anybody that might be thinking that, or maybe they're thinking of somebody that they know really well, that like maybe I should tell them about Katarina and stuff, that they just somebody that's close to them that they love, that they just know is going through some stuff. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks, Katarina?
Yeah, absolutely. Head on over to my website. I have a very active blog there where I actually write a
Okay.
lot and I give a lot of strategies and solutions. It's www.katarinapolonska.com. That's
Okay.
KATARINAPOLONSKA for anyone driving. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I post daily, sometimes even twice a day.
Okay.
And again, I write a lot of very informative content there. I love to hear from people. And even if you just drop me a message or book a call with me, just to share what's going on. I have no issue with jumping on the line and putting our heads together and thinking through your situation and sharing a little bit of advice on where
Okay.
to potentially go. So yeah,
Okay.
absolutely reach out.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Is there any last thing that you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I'd love to really emphasize that you don't have to struggle in your relationship, even if you have struggled for maybe a decade, maybe longer, maybe it's felt flat. It doesn't have to stay that way. And you do deserve to come home to somebody that you feel excited to come home to
Yeah.
feel well resourced, nourished, to sleep well, to have laughter over dinner tables. Like you deserve all of that. And it is possible, whether it's with your partner, whether someone new, it is all possible. And life is long, life is long. Some of my best clients are in their 60s.
Mm.
And it's the most incredibly rewarding thing to see them get younger,
Yeah.
literally, as
Yeah.
they find their person,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
such a it's such a gift. So
Yeah.
it's never too late and you do deserve it.
Amen. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share it with folks. So thanks so much, Katarina.
So welcome.